Hey, this is Jody Vesley, here again with the Heartway Pastor and Missionary Caregiver podcast. We are still in season 3 about stories, and today the episode is going to involve multiple stories, and it's going to be a little bit different than how I did the last few podcasts. So today the topic is the Missionaries Support Network, and specifically emphasizing unintended stresses caused from partners. So the goal of this podcast is to encourage missionaries and potential missionaries as they go through some of these unintended stresses that are caused from partners, and to inform partnering churches about unintended stresses, not that they can completely prevent them, but that they might be able to possibly lessen the stress put on the missionary and how to do that. The idea of mutual support between missionaries and local churches is biblical. In Acts 13, the church in Antioch, as they were worshiping God and seeking after God in prayer and fasting, they were led to send out Paul and Barnabas. In the Greek, it's evident that the Holy Spirit sent Paul and Barnabas. And then the church in Antioch released them and to allow them to do their mission that the Spirit was sending them, calling them to do. And so Paul's mission team maintained a deep partnership with their home church. They returned for visits, prayed together, encouraged each other, and gave thanks for their partnership. The partnering churches sent workers, finances, supplies, and prayer. And we see this all throughout Acts. We see Paul constantly growing his relationship with the churches. And an example of that is Paul referring to the believers in Philippi as his partners. And so today I want to point out 3 unintended stresses caused from partners. And again, this is unintended. It's not by any means is a church, a scriptural church, going to intentionally cause stress on the missionary just to cause stress. I mean, the missionary has enough on their plate just with the work that God's called them to, being overseas, and everything involved with that. The first unintended stress I want to point out is changes in the sending church. Changes in the sending church. And again, here, there's not necessarily a whole lot that can be done to prevent changes. I mean, change is inevitable. But I do want to point out that when a pastor changes, that does cause stress upon the missionary, because that relationship that the missionary had with the pastor of the sending church is no longer really important in the terms of the connection with the sending church now. So that's a stress upon the missionary, because if they're overseas, they don't have an opportunity to get to connect with that sending church pastor. Also, the sending church pastor doesn't know the missionary. And so I want to share a personal story about this. About a month after my sending church, which I love my sending church, but about a month after the church voted to be my sending church, the pastor had resigned. And so I was on deputation. Everything was new. And then we already had a pretty significant change in that. And so that was one thing that caused stress on us, because at that time we were just getting started. And so I guess in that case, if the church had an idea, or the pastor had an idea that they would be leaving soon, or were considering leaving, just giving the missionary a heads up, maybe even in confidence, like, I don't know if I'm going to Shroud, but it might happen. I'm considering it. Just giving that heads up is a way to lessen to lessen the stress. So because the missionary is, sent out by the church, and for tax reasons, the church is the employer of the missionary. So really, this is not just the work that God has called the missionary to, but it's their job, it's their livelihood. And so this kind of stuff is important for the missionary to know. I would say after the church got a new pastor, we had a good experience, but the pastor at that time kind of switched ways, switched directions. We found out about it on Facebook, so not the best option there. And this was pretty close to right before we were going out to Russia. So it was a short turnaround, and it was again another big uncertainty because that little bit of time that we had to form a new relationship with the new sending church pastor. Again, it kind of didn't mean a whole lot in terms of our relationship with our sending church. Now, I will say our sending church, in our case, we knew them, or a lot of the people in it before we were sent out by them. They were a church that I was a member of and my wife was a member of before we moved and went through seminary training. So we were familiar with a lot of people in the church, and a lot of people in the church were familiar with us. And I would say that was incredibly important. I would really be cautious of, asking just a random church to be your sending church. I know sometimes there's not a lot of opportunity to not do that because of the situation. Maybe you're on the field, and just to make things right, just to be able to keep getting your support that you need, having a sending church to be the go-between is necessary. But you should really try to get to know the church as well as you can, and let them get to know you as well as they can, which requires a lot of time, not just presentation time, not just time during service, but just time with people, letting them get to know you, you getting to know them, and just forming friendships. I would say that's really critical. And in the case then of pastoral changes, it's not as much of a big deal potentially as it could be had you not had a relationship with the sending church and just the pastor. I will say again, we really like our sending church. There was the last, typically in your missionary training, you get this idea built up that the last Sunday or the last time you're with your sending church before you go on the mission field as a missionary is kind of like this send-off time. You see pictures on social media of these send-offs and all of these things. And we kind of had that. It was a little odd for us because we had a pastor who's still with the church now, thankfully, that was coming in view of a call on that day. And so for us, it was, again, it was an unintended stress. The church was looking for a pastor. They thought, this could be the right person. It ended up being the right person. And at the same time, we were going out. What could have potentially lessened that stress is maybe just better communication, probably, maybe waiting another week before, or doing it the weekend before, do it the weekend after, the weekend before, something like that, or just communicating with the missionary, telling them the situation and seeing how, would be best, just communicating a little bit more about that would be, I think, the best thing to lessen the stress on the missionary. I would say another, talking about changes in the sending church, our sending church changed a lot in terms of who was in the church, the vision of the church, just throughout our time of being sent out. Our mission committee even changed. The head of our mission committee, our missions treasurer, they had left, and so these changes, again, they're not really changes that can be avoided per se. And I would say in our situation, it was communicated really well about this process, which was a good thing. But that is another just unintended stress upon the missionary is major changes in the church makeup. Because when that happens, then that relationship that you have with your church, it just changes. New people come in that don't know you don't know them. The people you do know leave, and so it's just something. It's an ongoing need to spend time with the sending church, which isn't always a possibility for the missionary to spend as much time as they would like to, because they are either on the foreign mission field or doing deputation related stuff stateside. There's not usually a whole lot of time the missionary has to dedicate to that. So I guess in this case, if the church does, or as the church makes changes, maybe just finding opportunities to maybe in the present day to Zoom the missionary into the church service to let people see them and interact with them a little bit. Maybe not even maybe during the main service, but also just more regularly. Just to have that communication, that relationship, so the missionary can see new faces and people can see the face of the missionary, and just things like that. Another unintended stress caused from partners that I want to mention is just dropping partnership without contact. Because missionaries usually think that the support is still coming in or will come in. At least that's how I am. If you do, if you handle your missionary finances well in terms of having a mission account set up with your sending church, so you don't have to report all offerings coming in every month as income, and instead have a salary coming out of that mission account with your sending church. If you do that, then you have a treasurer or someone in the church who's responsible to help with that is helping and serving the missionary in that way. And the missionary usually checks. I check once a month when we look at our reports and just kind of see, hey, is this? I kind of just look it over and just kind of make sure that everybody is still there, that our support's still coming in, look for any new support. And there are times that churches just pause and they don't send in their offerings for some reason or another. And then they do send them in. And there are times that they just stop suddenly and don't tell the missionary. I assume for a variety of reasons. Maybe they don't want to make contact or don't think to make contact. But I will say that it does lessen the stress if you do make contact and just let them know. It doesn't remove stress, of course, because the missionary is usually on the field and doesn't have the opportunity to raise new support at that time. But it does lessen the stress, especially if you go so far to tell them, a little bit of the reason, of why maybe your church is going a different direction with their support, investing maybe or focusing more on stateside church planning instead of foreign, or maybe there's a certain country that the church is focusing on more now, or they're just dropping their missions program or reducing their missions program, or the church is just going through some changes and financial issues, just being providing a little bit of information can help the missionary. And when this does come, because it's a part of the natural process of partnership, but without any communication, again, the missionary wonders if it was something on his end. Was the church not getting the reports that the missionary thought the church had been getting? Was the church looking for something that they didn't communicate to the missionary, and so the missionary didn't know they needed to communicate back? Again, communication is key in reducing stress, unintended stress. And then also, of course, if it is something on the missionary's end that they needed to do differently, giving the missionary that knowledge, whether it helps them or not, is still useful. So I want to encourage any partnering churches out there just to number one, communicate with the missionary when their support does change, and two, if there's a drop of support, or a change of support, just explain why, and that will help. That will help everyone, I think. The last, I do want to share this story. One time we were supported by a church that we never got the chance to go to. I tried reaching out to the church multiple times to try to get into the church, to thank them, to update them, because I'd never been to it, and so I wasn't sure why. I knew of the church, but I wasn't sure why they had partnered with us. And then, this was a few years, and then before I was able to even get a call back, or an email back, or a text back, or a message back, anything, the church stopped supporting us. So it was a really odd situation. So I know pastors are busy and there's a lot on your plate, but and you're gonna drop the ball sometimes. We all do when it comes to returning calls or messages. But if a missionary is a couple or more times trying to get in touch with you, and you're just not getting in touch with them, that again is causing stress in the missionary. And it's preventable. This one is preventable. Just get back with them, whether it works out to come or not. Just touch base. I've had that happen more than once, so it is a thing. So just letting you missionaries know, you're not alone in that. The last unintended stress caused from partners that I want to discuss is was that no response to the missionary's attempt in contact. So that is the last one. And these things, there's probably more that we could address, but these are some of the ones I wanted to address, especially changes in the sending church, and letting missionaries know, hey, it's not the end all. Even when you're going on the field, if they're making a change, they just voted to send you out, they're making a change. It's okay. It's okay. We made it through this, and you can too. Just make sure you keep doing everything you can to have a good relationship with as many people in your church as you can. I know we're all limited in that in terms of time, but anything helps. Anything helps, whether it's online communication or ideally in person, sending letters. Anything like this is helpful. So I hope this podcast has been useful to you all, helpful to you all, and I look forward to next week and the next podcast we do. Until next time, this has been the Heartway Podcast, where we seek to help with issues at the source.